forum out here. Thank you very much. Always an honor to be on the Indic Researchers Forum. Thank you, Yashas. Thank you, team. And thank you for all the participants, very distinguished panelists, very distinguished participants. Look forward to learning experience for the next 2 days. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be on the same platform as General Khandare and General Kocha, all fellow soldiers. We've been together for many years. And a number of things which I wanted to say have already been covered. So it's a challenge for me to now try and do something new or say something new, which is very difficult. Counter-terrorism is a big subject, and we given to me is speaking about counter-terrorism. Now, let me try and put in some context. Terrorism. General Kocha spoke about 16 treaties on various treaties on countering terrorism. We do not have a common definition of terrorism. It's an old saying: one man's terrorist is the other man's freedom fighter. So that is one context I think we should always keep in the back of our mind, that terrorism, as we see it, is terrorism, but many others see the terrorist as a friend who is fighting for his freedom, irrespective of wherever you're located in the world. And as you're covering, it's an international conference, and you're covering many spaces in the world, many countries and regions. I think I'll keep it very generic. Of course, India is a concern, and come to India later. Putting in context, as to the Global Terror Index report of 2021, 92 countries of the world, which is over 50% of the world. I'm not talking of area, I'm not talking about population, because much more. Those are smaller countries, some of them are really not impacted, but 92 countries are directly impacted by terrorism. I'm talking about direct impact of terrorism. That means there are violence levels on account of terrorism. Afghanistan, of course, leads. It is followed very closely by Iraq, Somalia. It's also taking the region. India is at number 12, Pakistan number 10, Sri Lanka at 25, Bangladesh at 40, China at 67, and Bhutan is devoid of terrorism. Nepal has resolved certain issues which it was there. But then again, having said that, I think the Global Terror Index is based on absolute numbers, right? And if we take India for that matter, large country with the 140 crore people, 1.4 billion people, with the area we have, if we were to take it into percentages or per person, then I think we would be much better off. We have done reasonably well in our counter-terrorist activities. Not to say that we need to continue to do well. So at an average, we see about 50,000 deaths on account of terrorism the world over, which is not very much in terms of percentages of deaths, but then these are avoidable deaths, and it's not only the fatalities, but terrorism impacts economic development. Because it is nations, especially developing nations, especially India, which seeks rightful place in the Committee of Nations, we look at long-term peace, stability, and economic development. And economic development only comes if we have peace and stability. And counter-terrorism, of course, in our context, is a concern, is a challenge nation-wise. If you look at what are the biggest challenges of counter-terrorism, cyber has been covered, financial has been covered. It is, we live in a networked, interconnected world. So it is not that something which doesn't happen, which impacts only India, doesn't impact the world. It does. Russia-Ukraine war impacted the world. COVID impacted the world. The withdrawal of the US forces from Afghanistan impacted the world. The situation in Iran, Iraq impacted the world. So whatever happens, we are an interconnected world. So everything that happens anywhere has got a direct impact the world over. It may be direct, it may be indirect, but the impact is always there, and mostly it is adverse. We look at the biggest challenges of counter-terrorism. What are the biggest challenges? The ways and means and measures to mitigate and minimize the threat, damage, and consequences of terror, and what do we need to do? There are certain fundamentals, and I'll just cover the fundamentals of countering terrorism, because the topic is counter-terrorism. The fundamentals are conflict prevention and mitigation of transnational security threats to address conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism. I repeat that: transnational security threats. Only a nation cannot do it. It's transnational. The second fundamental is measures to address conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism through social inclusion, education, and sustainable development. Social inclusion is a must, education is a must, and sustainable development, of course, we all know that. The third fundamental is promoting tolerance, intercultural, interreligious, and interethnic dialogue to address conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism. These are important issues: intercultural, interreligious, interethnic. Not only tolerance, tolerance for the other viewpoints. Ensuring respect for human rights and the rule of law, including good governance to address conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism. These are the fundamentals of counterterrorism. Counterterrorism is not only kinetic. Kinetic is only one part of it. It's a very minor part of the whole thing, but it is the beginning. Without the kinetic, without addressing the terrorism in a kinetic form, others cannot follow. Kinetic is important, it is integral, but kinetic is not the solution. Kinetic is only the start process. And once you've controlled the terrorism to a certain extent, then the political dialogue comes into play. There are other domains which are equally important: finance, economic development, social inclusion, education, technologies, cyber. And the biggest sufferers in any terrorist acts and the terrorist states are is not, the costs are not paid by the security forces, the costs are not paid by the state, the costs are being paid by the people of their particular region, people of their particular place, people of a particular state. They pay the cost because terrorism spreads all over. And another important domain, and General Khandare, of course, covered it, is the informational domain. That's very important, the informational domain to counter terrorism. Coming back to closer home, I think a word about how we have tackled terrorism is a study. We have had terrorism and insurgency issues. We were the second nation in the world to resolve a full-fledged insurgency in Mizoram. That was on 15th August 1985. We did resolve Mizoram, and Mizoram continues from 15th August 1985 to date, which is a long time now, as peace and prosperity and discipline does prevail out there, and there's been no terrorism in Mizoram thereafter. We've also successfully, I think, capped terrorism in the states of Nagaland, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, and to a large extent Manipur also. If you look at the violence levels are less in the even less in the law and order domain. They're just in the law and order domain, a few things. But yes, we have to fully resolve it. The military dialogue, the military part is over, the security force part is over, but we need to resolve it at the political level. The Nagaland solution of 2015 is still work in progress, I suppose. I'm not too sure where it lies now. It is near completion, but it's still not out in the public domain. However, we've seen a very excellent integration of our northeastern states, and I talk about northeastern states, I talk about 8.5 states, not 7 states, as we tend to believe, into the mainstream. But then we still need empathy for people. We need to treat them well. Coming closer to home again, let me go back to Northeast. General Khandare spoke about corruption, so very right. Let me give an anecdote. I was deployed in Manipur when the insurgency was intense. I won't say very intense, but it was intense. And the delegation of Bihar parliamentarians, the MLAs visiting Manipur. So I asked the local MLA, I said, why the Bihar MLAs visiting Manipur? He said, not in jest, in all seriousness, sir, they want to come and learn how corruption happens in the state. And I'm talking about 1985. So corruption is very important. Even in J&K, I think corruption is a very major factor. Good governance, good administration is required. And I thought I'd just build on the point which General Khandare had given. Coming down to LWE, that is a left-wing extremism which is in our hinterland, must complement the states, both the states where the problem of LWE is, the center, the security forces. Again, we have managed to, I think, cap it. We have not seen touch wood. We have not seen any major incidents happening for some years now. Things are moving well. Coming to Jammu and Kashmir. Right. Now, Jammu and Kashmir has got a different sort of a connotation. We have a mischievous neighbor on the west, which is always supporting what it calls the Kashmir issue. It is not the Kashmir problem which is there. It is the our neighbor who cannot and who has openly declared a philosophy of bleeding India through and cuts a proxy war. It started on the 13th of December 1990. It still continues to date. But yes, in the last 3 years, again, I have the figures. If someone wants it, I can take out the figures, but the time does not permit me to give out the figures. Suffice it to say that, again, the violence levels are subcritical. And I have the figures with me. If you look at 2018, if you have to go back to a period of 2001, we had about 4,000 fatalities. When I say fatalities, means all terrorists, civilians, security forces. We are down to the region of about 200 now, which is which compared to the 4,200, I think is a reasonable number. We have relative peace. We have seen the change in the modus operandi of the terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir, where they do targeted killings. Touchwood again, we have not seen a high-profile, high-visibility incident after Pulwama. I say it with a lot of care because the last time on the 14th of February of 2019, I was speaking at the NSG and I said the same words. It was the 14th of February, and I said that after Uri, we not had a major incident. We had incidents in Nagrota and Jammu, and lo and behold, we had the Pulwama incident. But I still feel that yes, we are doing pretty well. We see a lot of changes in J&K. Talking of Jammu and Kashmir, I think we need to follow a two-pronged strategy. One is for the internal dynamics and one is the external dynamics. In the internal dynamics, the counter strategy is based on 4 E's. Now, what are the 4 E's? Education, employment generation for our youth, economic development, and empathy for the people. I say it with all seriousness. This is the way to address it. When we talk about education, there are 46 Army Goodwill public schools in Jammu and Kashmir. And mind you, these are schools which are functional always. And we had a lot of, I still have about 4 minutes left. There's a demand and the people used to come and tell you, कि साहब हमारे बच्चे को आर्मी पब्लिक स्कूल में आप दाखिला दे दीजिए, उसकी जिंदगी बन जाएगी. Please admit him to our schools and he'll be made for a lifetime. Because in the end, each parents, each people, what do they want? He wants to grow, he wants peace, he wants to feed, he wants to educate his children, make sure they have an opportunity to be a part of a progressive world. So if that is why you find a number of our youth coming out of Jammu and Kashmir. We need to improve the education at the university level, at the college level, and this is happening, exactly happening. I again have the figures in me. The second E is employment generation. We find a 20.2% increase in the employment of youth in the last 3 years. Coming to economic development, number of MOUs have been signed. It's opening up. Unfortunately, after the 5th of August, we ran into the COVID. So after the COVID, things are improving. People are going to see the peace dividend. They have not fully realized the peace dividend, but then people are coming out of the streets, and you can see the silent majority now, which is batting for themselves, batting for Kashmir, batting for India, and batting for their own welfare. And the fourth is empathy. And that is, I think, where we all come into play. We should say, we should empathize with the people of Kashmir. We treat them, we don't treat them well. Let's be very honest about it. We have to treat them well. We have to treat them as our own people. We should not look at them as suspicion. Even in schools and colleges outside Delhi, outside Kashmir, you find there are groups. So we have to look after them. As for the external factors are concerned, of course, Pakistan remains a major player in what happens on our side of Jammu and Kashmir. Fortunately, we had a ceasefire on the 21st of February 2021, which has made infiltration a little difficult. Definitely infiltration and ceasefires are interlinked, linkages. That's why we have no ceasefire violation east of Zilla. So we need a 3-piece strategy for Pakistan. What is the 3-piece strategy? We have to be proactive, we have to be preventive, and we have to be preemptive. Okay, so proactive, punitive, and preemptive. Preempt what they want to do, punish them as we did, and you are going to be covering that. I think Air Marshal Costa is speaking on the operations in Jabbar Top. So we have to do that. In the long term, we have to look at how do we change Pakistan's behavior in the mid to long term, and what are the means to change Pakistan's behavior. With Pak region, the Afghanistan-Pak region, especially with the pullout of the United States of American pull out from Afghanistan. The base for terrorism expanded, and it is going to expand further. Let me finish off by quoting one of the former DG ISIs, General Hamid Kul. What he said after the Afghan pullout was, the US pullout of Afghanistan was that with the help of the US, Pakistan defeated Soviet Union. And with the help of the US, Pakistan defeated the US. And that's where Pakistan is. But what he did not say was that with the help of Pakistan, Pakistan will defeat Pakistan, because terrorism doesn't stop there. Terrorism spreads out there. And if the Af-Pak region is the center of epicenter of terrorism, then the biggest worry is towards Pakistan, and there comes India. Then we have the Central Asian region, and you're covering that, and of course Iran, Iraq, and West Asia, the world actually. It's not confined to this, the world. So with this, I'll end out here. We need a fundamental counterterrorism philosophy, and we need to translate that into effective operations for empathy of the people, and make sure that we prevent terrorism and not conquer it. Thank you very much.